You guys seem to be really interested in what equipment I'm using. I get a lot of questions about my rackets, but the most frequent questions I get is about my strings. Hey Nick, what is that orange string that you play with? So in today's video, I'm gonna show you my entire string history, but not only that, I'm also gonna give you recommendations what strings you should be using at the recreational level. All right, so my string history. When I first started out, just like any other junior, I play with synthetic gut. This is the cheapest string, and let me try to find one for you. Okay, so here we have a Babolat synthetic gut. So this is a super inexpensive string, but it doesn't last very long. And I was a big time string popper as a junior. And one funny story was, actually it's an embarrassing story, that my mom used to string my rackets. And I was actually very rude. I would just hand over the rackets to her and say, hey, you gotta get this done fast. And this went on for a while until I played a match where I was up 5-3 in the third, I was up 40 love, and I behaved terribly. I ended up losing that match, and my dad did me a big favor that day. He said, your mom is done stringing your rackets, you got to do this yourself. And in the very beginning, when I started stringing my rackets, they were so bad. They had maybe 10 to 15 pounds on them. There was tons of mistakes in the string job, and they were barely playable. But with time, I got better, and I'm very thankful for that day because I learned a valuable skill, and I've been stringing rackets now for over 30 years. All right, guys, here's the big reveal. I'm gonna reveal the orange string that I play with, but first I gotta give you a little bit of a history of what strings I used when I got a little bit better. So when I became a good junior, I started playing with polyester string, and back in those days, it was 100% polyester monofilament string. These strings are not around anymore. You won't be able to find them. And I played with a string called Kirschbaum Super Smash Honey. This was a golden string. It was from Germany. It was super popular. All the juniors were using it. And I played with this string for a while until I came upon a string called Polystar. You can see here I have a 400-meter roll, so you can see how much I like this string. And this is also a 100% polyester monofilament string. And I love this particular string so much that I used it for 15 years. So around the late 90s, early 2000s, all my friends who were high-level tennis players switched to a string called Luxilon Big Banger. And this was a big hit back in those days. Everybody was switching to this string. And I tried it, of course, and I didn't really like it. I never liked the feel of that string. It was a little bit too dead for me. So I continued playing with this old school polyester string. What happened was when I switched to the Babolat Pure Drive Plus racket, this string really didn't fit that racket quite well. And I tried a bunch of different strings. I played with Babolat RPM Blast for a while, and I do like this string. I think it's a very good string, but the best string that I have found, and I've been playing with it now for over a year, is Kirschbaum Super Smash again. Now this is quite different from the original Super Smash. This is the Kirschbaum Super Smash Orange, and it's not 100% monofilament polyester. It is actually a copolyester, so it's not quite as stiff as the original string. But I can tell you that this string, it gives me a lot of power, and I do like it a lot. A recent video that I made titled Testing All Rackets was a really fun video for me to make because I went through the history of the rackets to see how the racket technology had improved. But take a listen at how I finished this video. So the real revolution in tennis didn't come about with the racket technology over the last 20 years. It happened because of the strings. So the revolution in tennis, the way tennis is played today, didn't happen because of the racket technology. It happened because of the string technology. And I can tell you, I experienced this personally. So I already told you that in the late 90s, early 2000s, a company called Luxilon came out with a string that revolutionized tennis. So natural gut was the string of choice for all elite players back in those days. And polyester strings have actually been around for more than 30 years. But elite players didn't really like the feel of a string like this, 100% monofilament polyester string. It didn't give them enough control. Yes, there was tons of power, but professional players of that caliber needed more control for their game. And what happened in the late 90s was that a company called Luxilon put additional materials inside the polyester to dampen and deaden the string. And this truly revolutionized tennis because players who have tried to play with polyester had to be somewhat careful with their shots. They could easily overhit the ball. But once Luxilon came on the market, now players could hit the ball as hard as they wanted to without sacrificing control. And I read in the Andre Agassi book, open that Darren Cahill, for fun, put a set of Luxilon in Andre's racket at a tournament in Rome. And Andre did not miss a ball in practice for 2 hours. And after practice, he said, this string has to be renamed to Cheetalon. So this is exactly what happened. Now, players could hit the ball as hard as they want without sacrificing control. And what this meant was the game was changing. Now it's all about the unbelievable power from the baseline. And you can see that serve and volley is almost extinct. And the main reason for that are the strings. And pretty much every professional player switched to these type of strings. Now there are some who will still play with natural gut as a hybrid combination. So for example, Novak Djokovic, Andy Murray, and Roger Federer have gut in their string bed. Roger Federer puts his gut, interestingly, in the mains, and he puts the Luxilon in the crosses. And Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic, they do it the opposite way. They put the gut in the crosses and they put the Luxilon in the mains. But if you take the top 100 men, you will see that Luxilon is used by the vast majority of the players. Now there's some other brands, of course, that make strings that are very similar to Luxilon, but these type of strings, these what they're called copolymer strings that have different materials inside the polyester to deaden and soften the strings, is what everybody's using on the tour. Now let's transition to the important part of this video, which are my recommendations for the recreational level. And copying what Federer is doing with his strings or Djokovic really doesn't do you any good. Even on the WTA tour, you can see that the women use different materials than the men, and this is for a very specific reason. And before we get into what type of strings that you should be using, let me explain to you the different type of strings that exist on the market. A natural gut is a fantastic string because the combination of power and feel is something that's not really matched with any other string. If you play with natural gut, you get a lot of pop on the ball, but you also get a tremendous amount of feel, and therefore the string is very easy on the arm as well. Another string that's not really used anymore is Kevlar. This was popular in the 90s, but now you don't really see it. It's a super stiff string. It's not very good for the arm. And I highly recommend that if you still have Kevlar lying around, get rid of it. This is not something that you should be using. So I told you that I played for 15 years with 100% polyester monofilament string, something that you will not find anymore. These strings are extinct. And this string is really amazing when it comes to power. Now, when you string a racket with this type of string and you hit it against your hand, it makes that pinging sound. So really the ball is catapulting off the racket. It's almost like a trampoline. And the string is also very stiff. So the power is amazing, but the control is a problem. And I personally love these type of strings, but unfortunately, they're not easy to come by. And a multi-filament synthetic gut string is pretty much the same thing as synthetic gut, but there's multiple fibers on the string. And you can tell if you play with a multi-filament synthetic gut string that it starts to fray. And this can be annoying sometimes because it'll keep fraying and fraying, and sometimes you'll have only one fiber left and the string just won't break. But basically it's very similar to synthetic gut, and this is actually the string that gets recommended the most when players have tennis elbow. Often they will be recommended to use a multi-filament synthetic gut string because of the softness of it. You can see here that if I bend the multi-filament synthetic gut, I can easily tie a knot, and this is an overall very soft string to the touch, and when the ball hits this string, it's going to have a very similar effect to the synthetic gut. Okay, so next we have the copolymer string. So this is usually a polyester string that has other materials inside to soften and deaden the strings. And this is what's used on the ATP tour, and it is not what you should be using on the recreational level. So you could take a look at these strings. It's still somewhat soft, so it's very bendable. Not as much as the synthetic gut, of course, but you can see here that the string, yes, it's harder, it's stiffer to the touch, but it's still somewhat bendable. So what this means is when you hit a ball with these type of strings, the ball will get absorbed into this string and you will not get a lot of power. This is a dead string. You will have to manufacture the power yourself. And next we have a copolyester monofilament string, something that professional players do use, especially on the WTA tour. This is what I personally used, and this is a very stiff string. So if you touch this string, it's extremely stiff. You can barely bend it. It's very hard to try to tie a knot. It's just a super stiff string. And logically, people believe that with a string that's this stiff, this is supposed to be bad for your arm. It makes sense. So we have a super soft string here, like the synthetic gut is super soft. We have a super hard string here. So most people believe soft string, good for the arm, stiff string, bad for the arm. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. If you think about how the ball behaves when it touches the string bed, this will make even more sense. So let's take synthetic gut as an example. So this string is going to be super soft. So the ball is going to hit the string bed, and the string is really not going to do anything. The ball is going to get absorbed by the softness of the string, and you will not get any power from that. You will have to generate all the power yourself, and you'll have to exert more energy into the ball, more effort into the ball to make this power happen. On the other hand, the stiffer string, the copolyester monofilament string, is a lot stiffer. So when the ball hits this string, it will react a lot more compared to the synthetic gut. So it will bounce off the string much more, and you will have to exert a lot less energy. So when you exert less energy, less effort, this is of course easier on the arm. I can tell you personally, my arm always hurts if I have to play with synthetic gut. If I get a demo that has synthetic gut in it, my arm always hurts afterwards. And this is for a very specific reason. It's because I'm exerting more energy. I'm trying to hit the ball harder. I'm working my arm overtime, and this is causing pain. Now, if you look at the racket technology, we'll see the exact same thing. So let's take the senior tennis players as an example, 65 years and plus. And what do they play with? They play with those big rackets with the 115, 120 square inch head. And usually those rackets are very head heavy, but most importantly, they are super stiff. So why do the manufacturers make these rackets super stiff? So that the seniors can have easier access to power. Now, if they made these rackets super soft, it would be much more difficult to generate this power. The ball would get absorbed more in the frame, and the player would have to work harder. So strings are very much like the racket. The ball is going to react off a stiff string much more than off a soft string, and you will therefore exert less energy, and it will be easier on your arm. So my recommendations for you are that, first of all, if you're playing with a string and you have absolutely no arm pain and you like the way this string plays, I'd say don't even mess with it. Keep playing with it. Your body has probably gotten used to the particular string, and just stick with it. So if you have arm pain, I highly recommend that you give a copolyester monofilament string a try. You can look this up online. Just look underneath the strings. It will say copolyester monofilament. There's a lot of companies that make these type of strings. Now, when you get the string, get a 17 gauge. When you string them, do not go over 52 pounds. String it a little bit looser. And there's a good chance that if you play with the strings, you're going to exert less effort, and it's going to be easier on your arm.